very much, and thanks very much to the organising committee of May Day for giving me the opportunity to come along here today and explain a bit about trade unions in communities. But before I explain what we're about, maybe I should say something about what we're not about. We're not about replicating, imitating, and certainly not undermining the brilliant work of the trade union councils within this area. And I'm proud to say that both the Edinburgh TUC and Midlothian TUC are supporters of our initiative. And likewise, the STUC, and it was a great privilege for us in December last year to have Ros come along and perform the official opening of our hub in Craigmillar. And a hub that incidentally we hope will be the first of many across Scotland. And I have to say that already we're on the move, because with grateful thanks to the Lothian Health branch of Unison, we've now got a mobile office that means we can go into every deprived area of the city and the Lothians and take the message of solidarity and the need to become members of our great movement. What we are is a group of trade unionists built on a solidarity of purpose, not in strength of numbers. So if you happen to be a member of Vaughan branch, Lothian Health branch of Unison, the 12,000 members, or a member of RMT Glasgow Shipping branch, the 400 members, or if you happen to be a member of Unite Leonardo branch with 700 members, or Gary Clark's branch of the CWU Scotland number 2 branch with over 2,000 members, you'll have the same voting rights, because we're about recruiting to the movement as a whole, not its component parts. And we're funded by the participating branches and by donations from the public. We're staffed by volunteers from those branches, and again from volunteers from the community. We've no paid staff. And we're also, as well as giving advice and building the movement, we're also able to give advice, or at least signpost people who have housing issues, benefits issues, etc., because of our relationships with organisations that have expertise in those areas. So already we're seeing the benefits of just 5-6 months' work at most. And the purpose behind it is to bring our great movement into the heart of communities, to bring what we can offer as trade unionists, our organisational skills that can assist the brilliant work, and it doesn't matter where you go in Scotland, any working class community is filled with volunteers, voluntary groups that are doing terrific work. We want to add our skills to that and at the same time build our movement. Why is it important to be in communities? Well, I think there's a number of reasons, and I would say probably first is that our movement should never work in isolation. And we've heard the strikes referred to the past year, the strikes that have taken place. I think it's recognised by any trade unionist that if strikes are going to be successful, then it requires public support. To get that public support, we need to be there. We need to be in the communities. Because there's one thing guaranteed, the mainstream media in any dispute will have the headlines talking about left-wing militancy, you know, and bringing that, and of course left-wing militancy is a terrible thing, isn't it? Right. And it was terrible when I was watching a few weeks ago those known left-wing militant barristers bringing the country to almost revolution. But the thing about it is, there are people, and I'm quite sure that people in here have heard comments that I've heard whilst in the pub. I heard a comment about the teachers. I've got a wee bit of sympathy for the teachers, you know, but I think they're going over the top now. because they got a 10% pay increase last year. And of course, I'm thinking, where was this 10% pay increase? But that's the message that is out there in the public. Probably through social media, where somebody will just post up on Facebook that greedy teachers or greedy whoever worker it is. So it's important that we are in the communities making sure that the message is clear. Don't read the Metro. Don't read the Sun. Don't believe everything you see on Facebook. Listen to the trade unionists that are negotiating within the workplaces. Secondly, when I talk about trade unions that are negotiating and organising within the workplace, I think it is important that it doesn't end here. Of course it's important that we represent, that we negotiate in the workplace. But it's also important that we move into the communities. And, you know, some of the brilliant work that's been done over the years by the movement is no longer recognised. For example, down the road there, that bastion of democracy, the Scottish Parliament, would never have been standing there today had it not been for the actions of the STUC and people like Mick McGackie at the time that were forcing the issue. No political party done that. And one of the things that, you know, absolutely crucial was the equality issues. Some of the issues that we now take for granted were fought for years and years by this great movement. Whether it was women issues, LGBT plus issues, whatever, were all the TUC, STUC were at the forefront of those issues. So while we have successes in the workplace, it's also vastly important that we bring our trade union values into the wider community and we remember the successes of the past and the present. And thirdly, I think we've got to recognise that we as a movement are not the only opposition to the Tory government or any government that's going to attack working class communities. We need to be standing shoulder to shoulder. I mean, if a union, and there's been successes this year, you know, the lowest paid in the NHS, for example, getting inflation-proof rises along with PCS deal that's been struck, the lowest paid again. So there's been successes, and we should celebrate those successes. But what good is that success? Are the people on zero-hour contracts, are the people on below minimum wage, which many of them still are, do they celebrate that? We need to be in these communities to ensure that they'll celebrate next year, because we'll have unionised them and we'll have brought them into this movement, and the next time they go for a rise, they're going to go as trade unionists and with the solidarity that that brings to ensure that we're lifted out of the problem. There's so many lessons to be learned from the community. Brian, of course, has had to stand in and speak about rail. Brian's real job, of course, is seafarers. And he was at the forefront of the dispute. At Cairn, we went into Cairn Ryan, a few of us went down to Cairn Ryan, the terrible P&O dispute, 800 workers sacked. And the CEO sits in Westminster and openly admits that he lied. Openly admits that he broke the law. And what happens? Absolutely nothing. But had RMT reacted, walked out and had a real blockade on the ports across the UK, he would have been in court, and every single halfpenny that they possessed would have been stripped because of the anti-trade union legislation that we currently live under. Whereas, in the communities, they take the action with the full knowledge that they've no assets to be stripped. And who can forget the brilliant action taken in Kenmure Street, Glasgow, in 21? Hundreds of people came onto the street to ensure that the Home Office and the police could not deport their neighbours. An action, by the way, that was replicated up the road in Nicholson Square just a year later. That's the power of the no threat of second expression. threat that they may be lifted and end up in jail, but the solidarity actually that was shown on those 2 occasions is sure that that was never going to happen. So we've got a growing movement. Within the movement and within the communities, we need to build a wall of resistance because the attacks of this government are not finished. We see the proposed legislation that's going through. We see the attacks on our own movement. We see the attacks on our communities. Only by concerted joint effort of trade unions and the communities can we successfully fend off those attacks. We've signed up a few members, not as many as we would have liked since we opened the hub, but we didn't expect to do that in the first 6 months. What we wanted to do in the first 6 months was build relations with the many active groups, community groups, that are in that area. And when that is achieved, and we're achieving it very quickly, I have to say, then we'll see the fruits of our labours. One other thing I want to touch on this though, is I don't know how many times, and I'm looking at the age group Brian actually commented on earlier, there's really an awful lot of youngsters here. And, the amount of times that I've heard people, but there is Cameron, I see you, there is Cameron's making sure. But the thing is, when people say youngsters aren't interested, well, I'll tell you what, 3 weeks ago, we had young trade unionists host a fundraiser for trade unions and communities, and it was an absolutely brilliant night in the Leith Dockers, and it was packed, and the youngsters were so enthusiastic that us as oldies went away absolutely delighted. I mean, my intention, if I'm being honest, was to pop along for about half an hour and then shoot the crow. I ended up there almost to the end because it was such a fantastic night. So don't anybody say that the youth of today aren't interested in trade unions. If they're not, it's because our generation has not asked them to be members. So that's how we do it. I've spoken about our links with the community groups, and we're going to continue that. We're meeting them almost on a daily basis now, and we've got great relationships with all the voluntary groups, community groups within the Craigville-Niddrie area. I want to make an appeal to you today, funnily enough. I bet that surprised you. I want to make an appeal because while we've got many branches on board and it's growing, we need more. We need the teachers, we need the lecturers, we need the shop workers, we need the manufacturing workers if there's any left in the country. We need you. We need everybody to come in and join us. So if you're a member of a branch that hasn't yet affiliated to trade unions and communities, visit our stall on your way out and speak to us about how you can achieve that. If you've retired, as many of you in here have, if you've retired, why not think of it giving us some of your time and volunteering for a bit in the hub? Anyone we've got volunteers from the community, and everybody loves their time in the hub, as we call it. So think about giving us a wee bit of your time. If you can't give us your time, but you think the venture's worthwhile, give us some of your cash. Give us some of that pension that your union negotiated for you. You'll see at the stall, stand in order forms, take them away, you fill them in, and let us grow the movement. I was going to speak, because Gary Clark of the CWU isn't here today, Lynn had said, look, is there any chance he could maybe say something on that dispute, given the fact that I worked in Royal Mail, well, I was employed by Royal Mail for 27 years. That was in the good days, Royal Mail. Almost 20 of those as a full-time branch officer with the CWU. So I will say about that. And I was reluctant to say it because I don't like being seen to be interfering in the affairs of another union. But having spoken to my ex-colleague Willie Marshall here for the CWU on the way up, he informs me that the Scotland No. 2 branch have yet to make a recommendation on the proposed agreement. Therefore, I feel free to say a bit about it. I won't take too long on it because, to be quite truthful, I was astounded when I seen the agreement. Never mind the fact that it's a 3-year deal, an effective 3-year pay cut. Never mind the fact that the terms and conditions of postal workers are being trashed. Never mind the fact that they're introducing a 2-tier workforce. Never mind any of that. There's 400 CWU members, activists, currently sacked or suspended. So my message to all CWU members out there, stay loyal to yourself, stay loyal to your union, because you are the union, and tell headquarters to shove the deal up their arse, and there will be no return to work until those 400 workers are reinstated. I don't want to end on a note of defeat, because the action that's been taken over the last year by this movement has been absolutely terrific. I have never, in all my years, I never thought we'd come to the day following the defeat of the miners in '85, I never thought we would see this day again. But there was a resurgence for the movement. And people will say, right, there was no victories because we never achieved inflation-proof rises. And that's true. But this is the first step. But say to these people, go back and check what the initial offer was in the NHS, in the councils, in the teaching industry. Go back and have a look, see what those offers were and see where we ended up. And of course, Roz pointed out 1.2 billion that we've gained through the actions taken by this movement. That is absolutely fantastic, and that's what we've got to build on. So I'll finish on saying this. We need of course we need the movement, we need the communities as well. That's what we witnessed in the past year, massive solidarity from the public for the strike action that's been taken by this movement. And I'll finish by saying, just along the road there, 107 Cowgate was born probably the most famous and best trade unionist ever to come out of Healthcare City, James Corden. And for years, Connolly worked under the slogan, fairness at work, justice in society. Let's rekindle that slogan and breathe life into it. Thanks very much for listening.